there's, probably 10 things that we're mandated to do in the code. We also provide technical support to you guys, technical assistance, sometimes trainings such as this, or information. We do a lot of work behind the scenes that you guys don't know about. We look at bills, the new bills that are coming through. We have actually a new one that just hit us. It's an easy one for receipts. It's going the same way as the straws. So your receipts at a restaurant, they want to get rid of that. They want it to be electronic. So we look at all of these things as they come in, and we handle the retail food issues. Whatever comes in, we get all kinds of crazy stuff. Things that fall through the cracks come to Brenda and I. And she works on the grant that we have, which is the EHS NET grant. And it's a contract that we have. And we do standardization. We are federally standardized to FDA's procedures and protocols. So if a county wants to get standardized and go through that procedure, we're available to set that up once you guys have a procedure in place. So there's a lot of different things we do, and I'm just giving that in a nutshell so you kind of know, what we do. And there's probably a lot of other stuff we do, but anyways. So. And our branch, I don't know if you knew that we have a new branch chief. David Mazzara we're supposed to get a new branch chief. That's open now. And so we're waiting any day for that position to be filled because David Mazzara got promotion. So he is now over the Food and Drug branch, the Food and Drug lab, tobacco safety enforcement, medical device and drugs, which is all under us, and also cannabis safety. So he's moved up. So anyways, one of the mandates in the retail food code is that the state will review and hopefully approve any HACCP plans for reduced oxygen packaging at a retail food facility. So when you guys go out there and you see that they're vacuum packaging, you normally would tell them you need to have a HACCP plan approved by the state, right? So then they send in their application and they send in the fee for us to review it. It's not free, and a hard copy of their plan. And because we don't accept them electronically because they can be up 200. I have one that's this high right now. And why do they send that like that? That's just their plan. So we have to review it. We can't dictate to a business how they're going to write it or how big it's going to be. As long as the elements are in there, we're cool. But we have to receive them hard copy for that reason. They'll try to email us and say, we're not printing out 400, 500, or 1,000 pages. So best thing is when you see that happening out in the field and they don't have a HACCP plan approved by us, then what you want to do is make sure they have knowledge of the applications and in the fee in the application and a hard copy of the plan. So I'm going to go over this pretty quick, and Mike, feel free to tell me you're going over, play that music like they do at the Oscars, and I'll move on to the next one. I'll try not to, because this one's like a 45-minute presentation, and I have not condensed it into any other type of, so I'm going to zoom through. I'm just going to go over what the 3 processes are of reduced oxygen packaging that we see. Everybody knows what reduced oxygen packaging is, correct? Or is anybody?
I don't know.
Okay. It is where they take potentially hazardous food and they vacuum seal it in a bag. And so they call it vacuum packaging. They have a vacuum sealing machine. And you guys do plant checks, so you want to make sure all their equipment when they come in is NSF approved or food grade or whatnot, whatever. But what we look at when we ask them to send us specific information about their machine is we want to make sure it's not a home type of use machine. Okay, because that's not our role as we plant checking. But we do ask for that information just to kind of provide a little bit of oversight. So anyways, it creates an anaerobic environment where the botulism bacteria, Clostridium botulinum, and Clostridium perfringens too, but botulinum is the worst one, where it can grow. And so and the other bacteria of importance is Listeria. And Clostridium it just loves this thing where if there's temperature abuse over time in that bag, then it becomes more of a risk for botulism to form. Listeria also, because it's a refrigerated product, since vacuum packaging increases the shelf life, now you have this bacteria Listeria which can grow in a cold environment and its extended shelf life. Because you know a lot of times, you guys don't do date marking, but FDA requires that at a food facility. Date marking is for listeria because the extended shelf life of a product. Sorry, I'm over here like I'm in a confined spot here. So that creates another risk because of the vacuum packaging. Okay, so there's different processes. Modified atmospheric packaging, and we don't really see that too much in retail. I think I probably maybe one or two the whole time I've seen that. No. So I'm going to focus on explaining to you the regular vacuum packaging, the quick chill, and the sous vide. Those are really the three methods of ROP that we see that come through as a plan, and you guys will see. Sometimes it gets submitted to us. They're doing all three. So their plan will have a plan, has a plan for all three of those methods. Sometimes they're just doing one, or they're doing two.
I'm sorry, what does CAP stand for? I know MAP, I'm not sure about CAP. I know you were skipping over it then.
Okay, well, as I go through it, it'll
okay,
yeah,
sorry.
I'm just trying to go extra fast. Sorry. It's Mike's fault. I'll blame him. Okay, so I'm going to move ahead, so this is what the California Retail Food Code section that defines ROP, and it's talking about the reduction of oxygen to be less than what the atmosphere around us is. So you're reducing that oxygen. And you do this by placing it in a permeable bag where the oxygen transmission rate is less than 10,000, okay? So you may have Ziploc bags, or they may tell you, hey, our bag doesn't fit this criteria. It allows more oxygen to go through the bag, or a Ziploc bag, but they need to prove that to you, either with manufacturer specifications or something that proves it to you. Otherwise, I wouldn't believe them until. So, anyways, then they can be out of the ROP HACCP criteria if they can prove that. Removing the oxygen from inside the package, which is the MAP or the CAP. They can do that with things that absorb the oxygen. And sealing the package to prevent oxygen from reentry. The advantages of ROP is extends the shelf life. It makes the food look better because it's not oxidizing it. The meat stays better. They can cook in huge batches and more consistency than just I'm cooking this pot here, this and then the next pot, and so you have inconsistency between batches and flavor recipe or whatnot. So they can make a lot of food and make it more consistent in the flavors or whatever they're doing with the recipes. Better portion control. They can manage how much food they're making and actually save it, in the refrigerator instead of waste. Less, mess and things like that. And of course, it reduces cost for the facility. And these are the two bacteria that we talked about that are of our major concern. You can also throw in Clostridium perfringens because it does cause foodborne illness. This one causes death, so, pretty quickly. And Listeria and Clostridium, and you'll see in the California Retail Food Code that the state is mandated in that subsection B for HACCP to do these two things, which is the ROP and the canned foods, just because of the fact it's Clostridium, the botulinum risk. And the concern with vacuum packaging in that kind of environment that it creates, the spoilage organisms may not be there to outcompete the Clostridium bacteria, Listeria bacteria. So you're not going to have, where it smells bad or it looks bad necessarily to indicate that the product is not good. So that's why it's another risk. This, yes, right here, this drives me crazy. They call me and I'm like the biggest thorn in their side, the last hurdle to jump, and they can't understand why why the county kind of tell me I have to do this, and they don't understand. So they're yelling at, I get a lot of mean folks, chefs who think they know everything, and they just don't understand why. So it's really helpful if you guys explain to them and educate them out there, about the botulism and other things. Here we go. there was the answer to your question. It's when they put these little, I don't know if you've seen them in packaging when you buy your food. There you go. It's to absorb the oxygen or displace it, and they have different methods for doing that. They use this a lot in food processing at the wholesale manufacturer. You'll see that a lot more. I really haven't seen, I think I had one person that I could think of that submitted a plan that actually does this, so I wouldn't even focus on it. And actually, all of this we do, so it's just good to be familiar with it, so, but you really don't have to worry about approving plans for this, we don't do it. Vacuum packaging of raw food. One of the barriers to preventing the bacteria from growing is either it's raw, well, two barriers, raw and refrigerated. Once you start doing something else to it in the bag, like cooking it or cooking it before you've removed a barrier. So then you're into cook, chill, or sous vide, or you can't do it. Depends on what they're doing. If they're acidifying or brining or doing something before they put it in the bag, we don't let them do that unless they can prove to us with a state certified laboratory test results that their acidification or their salting or brining or whatever, they're adjusting the pH or the water activity as a barrier to replace the second barrier, then they have to prove that to us, and it has to become a critical control point in their HACCP plan. So if they submit that to us as well as in their HACCP plan, and if as the lab test results showing that their their process is validated and it's safe, then we'll accept that. But they have to do that extra bit of work, and most people we're not doing that. Had a few. Let's see. We've already gone over that. Vacuum packaging. That's again where it's raw, and we're talking about the primary barrier is temperature control. The second barrier is that it's raw or one of the following. And again, well, number one is the raw. If they're doing these three things, we need extra proof. This one is really just a support letter from the plant, but these two things become a lab test that they have to submit. California Retail Food Code is not up to date. It's scientifically out of date when it comes to ROP. Doesn't even cover chill cook, sous vide or cooked chill. So if you look at California Retail Food Code, it'll say the use by 14 days. Well, guess what? It's safe to keep to 30 days, and we're not going to restrict the business from doing, going to 30 days. So we will accept a plan that says 30 days. That's why I keep pushing for the California Retail Food Code to be updated, but no one's updating. Okay. Fish, it has to be frozen before, during, and after, unless a variance. And believe me, a lot of people don't want to do a variance for that, because it has about 6 different variations of botulism bacteria that's associated with fish on the scales and whatnot. So it's just a higher risk product, so it needs to be frozen before, during, and after. And that's in the code, and period, or they can't do it. Cheese must be a semi-soft or hard cheese, and it has to adhere to the standard of identity for cheese.
John, question here.
Sure.
I just have a quick question about the fish. So with the frozen before, during, and after, does that still apply even if they're doing it for 48 hours or less?
Yes.
Okay, so regardless, 48 hours or less, the fish always
Yes.
needs to be frozen.
Yes.
That's what we do. I just wanted to make sure. We
Yeah.
always get that question.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And that little addition to the law was I wanted the whole FDA thing, not just that one little section, but somehow that was all I got in there.
Thank you.
Okay, so cook chill is where they cook it in big batches, soup, sauces, and whatnot, and they cook it to like 165 at 15 seconds, right? Like should be done, or whatever the cook time is required for that product. And then they put it in the bag after it's cooked, but they cannot put it in the bag at less than 135 degrees. So the fill is 135 degrees or higher. And then they seal it, and then they cool it down rapidly. And this is soups and sauces. They do meats and things like that too, but typically it's for that. these are the requirements. I'm going to zoom through. But with quick chill and sous vide, we want this rapid cool down. A lot of people think, oh yeah, you know, your cool down that you normally do with your GRP inspection, getting it down to 41, this temperature, and then to 41 in 6 hours. Yes, that's cool. But we want to actually also do one of these three things, or they can do all three of those things. But for the cook, chill, the sous vide products, one of these is required because we want to get it down fast and we want to keep it at a low temperature. Get it down quickly and store it at that temperature. Why? Because that Clostridium bacteria. Because if it's too warm, it'll get going, and we're going to have those, the bacteria taking off for Clostridium. So we have this, which is a GRP, but this is a critical control point for me, because everybody has to do that. This, though, is for sous vide or cook chill. So now that we've got it in the bag, we're going to rapidly cool that thing down and get it into refrigeration or the freezer. So that's pretty much it, because the spores survive the cooking process. That's why. I'll talk about that. They're sealed, okay, and of course, because of the extended shelf life situation, labeling is a must. I need to see that plan. We're talking about the rapid cool down. And of course, you all have these handouts, so we have a copy. I'm going too fast. The same thing with Listeria that we talked about, and all records need to be kept for 90 days. And if they are going to reheat that product, it needs to be at 165 for 15 seconds, and it has to be a critical control plan. If they're doing quick chill or sous vide, and this is an interesting thing lately, everybody wants to do meal subscription services, meal delivery services. And somehow they think that they can get a HACCP plan approved by us for cook, chill, or sous vide and go distribute it. So I've had a few plans erroneously submitted to me, and I have to call them up and say, you cannot do that. Sous vide or cook, chill, or retail has to be consumed on the premises. It cannot be distributed, sold for retail, any of that. It's a cooking, think of it as a cooking process, storage process for that facility. The only way they can take it out and distribute it, let's just say it's a hospital and they have a satellite food facility or something like that, they can do it on their property, on their premises that is owned by the same company. That is it. So most guys keep thinking they're gonna, everybody's pushing boundaries right now, right? Sous vide. Okay, so that one was cooking it and then putting it in the bag. Sous vide is taking the raw product, sealing it in the bag, and then cooking it to the required temperature. That's the only difference. And the rest of the same, requirements. The cool down, we said the rapid cool down, the storage, is required. So, I'm trying to go fast, right? What's not our ROP? Canned foods, even though we're controlling for botulism, same things, canned foods are shelf stable, they're not refrigerated. And they're canned in different ways to can things, but that would not be an ROP. Like we said, like Ziploc bags or something like they're storing garlic and oil, that's not ROP. Okay, the new section that you guys were wondering about that was added to the Retail Food Code. This is really pretty simple, and I know it's confusing, but it is pretty simple. They can have an exemption if they're doing these three things, not just one of them, not just half of one of them or two of them. They have to be doing all three of these, and they have to prove it. If you're confused out in the field and they're not able to prove this, then send them to me. I'll figure it out. But they have to be doing all three. Not 1 second past 48 hours in that bag. That's it from beginning to end. Because why? We're talking about extended shelf life, which creates more of a risk for bacteria to grow. So you want to make sure that they're labeling it with when it was made and the date, held at 41 degrees or lower, and it's removed out of that package from when it's put in to when it goes out. It's no longer than 48 hours. They can't prove it. They can't do it. they're not, I get all kinds of like, oh, what if they're doing this? No, it has to be these 3 things, period, to get that exemption. If it's confusing, then this and okay, so we talked about, I'm gonna skip through this because I have another presentation on, if you have to do enforcement, always follow your agency's policy. And we have any questions on this before I go to the next one?
Sorry. If they are doing sous vide also during the 48-hour process, will that still require a hazard plan because the sous vide is different than just regular ROP?
It applies to all 3 methods.
Because sometimes they will vacuum pack it, sous vide it, and then use it within 48 hours, and that whole thing happens within the 48-hour time.
That's okay.
It's okay. They don't need a plan.
As we're talking about the bag.
Right. As long as it's out of the bag within 48 hours.
Right.
So it's not about that cooking.
No.
So as long as they cook it to the right temperature, right? Because sometimes they cook it for a very long
and that
time
would
at a
be,
lower temp.
You're going to be doing your GRPs then if they're exempt, right? They got to cook it to the right temperature.
But if they don't, is that going to be a variance?
No, that would just be a violation. But if they're exempt, that would be just one of your regular violations. They're not cooking it to the perfect temperature. Because sous vide can be used as a cooking process, a cooking procedure, and I'll not need. Let's say I'm going to make something. Put it in the bag right now. I'm going to sous vide it in the water to 165, 15 seconds. Take it out. I'm going to open the bag and put it on a plate right now. No house of plants not considered ROP.
So they aren't allowed to cook it at a lower temperature for a longer period of time with sous vide.
The only way, if they're not going to comply with California Retail Food Code, they would need a variance.
Okay.
And we would have to approve that.
Yep.
So you're talking about probably the USDA temperature chart.
Okay.
Oh gosh, just a
Okay.
rinse.
Thank you. That answers my
All right.
question.
Okay. Anybody else?
Just a quick question. When the Calco came out with the 48-hour thing, did you guys see a drop in HACCP sales for that?
No.
Really? Because it seems like every place I went were doing it for less than 48 hours.
You know what? There's probably a lot of them trying to get away with stuff, so I just keep an eye out. Yeah.
And how much is the review genre right now?
We're so dirt cheap. We're such a deal. And for us to get anything approved to increase the cost, it's like an act of Congress. And you see how that's going right now. So, yeah, it's $207.
I may apply.
And then if they need to resubmit, do they have to pay again?
Well, technically they should because in the law, it doesn't really, but what we do is if they will submit it to us, resubmit it to us within the year, the calendar year, we won't charge them.
Okay.
If it's over a year, we'll ask for the $207. If it's over the year going into 2 years, we shred that thing and they need to start all over. And they'll try to send me pieces, piecemeal stuff, and I'm like, you know what? I used to take it by email, and it was like craziness. Here's this, and then they send me that, and I'm like, yeah, I get hundreds of emails from all you guys and everybody else. So I said, you know what? You just need to send a hard copy of it, whatever it is. Sometimes it's easier just to resubmit the whole thing, so I don't have to marry up this and that they had before. But it just depends. If it's just one little thing they need to fix or two, then okay, yeah, email me that, and I can print it up or whatever. But they get, you know how people are. They'll take advantage of you. All right, so that's me.